Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the top 10 most well designed Ark Tames. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. In at number 10 we have got the Crystal Wyvern, and come on, this really does deserve to be on the list. A wyvern which is significantly easier to tame, and their elemental abilities just really do work to the fullest. While like the normal wyvern, their turning circle isn't the best thing in the world, their speed is still something of huge respect, and their damage output is something which you really can't put behind you. These creatures are capable of gathering insane speed when travelling across the Ark map, and although maybe they can't go as fast as something like a griffin, it lacks that dive bomb ability, and just at a standard normal flying rate, the wyvern flies faster than the griffin anyway. It really is a very well designed Ark creature, and if you've never tamed one before, I would strongly recommend that you do so at some point. Next up, I've decided to put the Velonosaur, as I really do like this as an Ark creature, and I find it's sort of sad that they haven't revisited the same design as the Velonosaur ever since its release, or at least maybe had some kind of newer variant, but I guess that's fine. The Velonosaur still stands by itself, although I think a bit of TLC could be nice on a creature like this. But I find the ability that it has to shoot spines at other creatures works really effectively, and I love it as a tame. It again is a shame that they haven't really doubled down on this in a way, because I'd like to see more creatures with these abilities. I find it such a cool way to attack and think of combat scenarios, as now it's not just simply run up to something and just smash it. You think about the distance you are from the creature, and you think about like tactics more or less, which maybe you wouldn't think about in a general given Ark scenario of fighting, because Ark fights tend to be not on the very exciting side, at least in the PvE side of things, because it's basically just stand there and click a button. I know it still kind of is the same thing, but it adds a new dimension. Coming up next, we have got the Thyla. This creature is really an insane one on the island, and it's sort of uncontested really on the map, although there are a few creatures which I think do a slight better job in terms of design than the Thyla, but it does fit into its own niche very well, being able to scale walls and vertical surfaces with relative ease. And I say it struggles a little bit because the terrain can be finicky in a lot of areas, but still you can get around relatively easily, and they have the bleed ability on top of all of this too, which is a great thing for all carnivores to have. It really isn't something which you should underestimate, as it is something which is going to gain you great damage output when fighting general creatures along the way of just whatever travel you're on, because realistically you're probably using this more as a travel mount. But considering just how good they are at combat as well, sadly they're not allowed into bosses, you are going to be safe along all of that travel, as long as maybe you don't get dismounted off of your mount. But you know, that could go with really any creature apart from creatures which have rider protection, which this creature doesn't. But that great mobility and great damage output really do make this a very well designed creature, and it works ergonomically with the controls. It never feels fiddly to get around things. I really do like how this creature has been designed, and I think it really is a good one in that aspect. In at number 7 we have got the Baryonyx, and I find for caving there is no creature which is better designed than this thing. It really just does a lot in terms of all of that. It is a small agile carnivore that is capable of going through caves with relative ease. It's like the perfect size for all of them, apart from the artifacts of the Skylords, but you would struggle to even bring something like a dung beetle or a dilo in there, so there's no point moaning over that cave. But all the other caves, as far as I'm concerned on the island, even the underwater ones, this creature is going to be exceptionally good at, and I love its caving use. It is a fast, mobile creature that is capable of outputting damage when it needs to, and its health isn't too low where it's just going to die under the huge influx of enemies, as you're going to need quite a lot of health to do these caves. But it should be all well and just perfectly fine if you simply prepare with one of these things. And because of their spin attack that can stun creatures up to the size of a Megalodon, they work quite effectively in underwater caves too, adding to their truly great design in my opinion. Coming up next, we have got the Ark Tames, and I really do have to put it here. The RG has been through so many times with me as an Ark player. I find it is really deserving of the list, extremely deserving of the list, I should really say. This creature is just capable of so much as a tame, and although some people might say it's a little bit on the slow side, its weight reduction and its smithy its saddle acting as a portable smithy really do hone in this creature's use for efficiency. The fact they can also pick up an extra creature in its mouth along with a very wide range of creatures, especially considering its size in its claws, this really is one for travelling goods across the map. If you thought of the big cruise liners that maybe go through the canals like the Suez and Panama, the RG is essentially that, but just in Ark instead. They can also really quickly regen too with no difficulty whatsoever. If you simply eat something that's dead or kill something and then eat said dead body, you will regen with insane speed. And trust me, it may not seem useful on the surface, but when you get into it, it really does come in handy where you may not actually expect it. In at number 5, we have got the Desmodus, and come on, I feel like this creature really does deserve to take the middle spot. While being a great glider like the Griffin, I will give the Griffin an honourable mention here. Again, do not comment I didn't put the Griffin on this list, and while technically I didn't, I'm putting it in the number 5 spot with the Desmodus, same as the Snow Owl. That is another great creature, but I'm mainly going to be talking about the Desmodus here, as it is my favourite of the 3. This creature has the glide ability, similar to the Griffin and the Snow Owl, not the dive bomb ability like the Griffin has, but still, I find it works very smoothly and effectively, and I only really use the ability for just travelling with better speed rather than actually attacking. It can grip onto any kind of wall, vertical surface, or even ceilings, like the Tapijaras you'll find on the map, although this is a far better creature than that. Same tone message as the creature next up on the list, so I'll get onto that then. And they can also make Sanguine Elixir, which is just pure joy as a PvE player to me, because, you know, 30% of your team done with a click of a button. They're also blood bag farms, which is very important for this creature and the next one. Coming up next, as you could probably expect, we have got the Bloodstalker. This creature is one of those where it is just so well designed for so many environments. I simply have to put it quite high on the list. If you didn't know already, and if you haven't been watching the channel recently or just at all, if you're new here, the Bloodstalker is my all-time favourite underwater mount, and I really can't find anything, in my opinion, that exceeds it in that sense. It does make sense though, being the main travelling mount on Genesis Part 1, and Genesis Part 1 of course having that ocean biome. It really does lean into all of that, and I think it works very effectively. You can see all the aggros of the creatures, so you can quickly escape danger if you ever feel you need it. You can skate along the top of the water too, so that could also be a measure of escaping danger. Or also simply, if you just want to cross the water without swimming in it, you can just skate along the top of it. And then when you come out of the water, you can just Spider-Man yourself all around the place. Not to mention that in the water you've just got great mobility as well, which I can't really find with a lot of other underwater creatures. You can just move in all directions so fluidly and easily, with no bad turning circles or things like that. It basically has no mass, this creature, to some sense, and obviously it's quite a small one, so it would make sense why everything is quite small and tight, and you really feel like that this creature is just one of those where you really do just love it in an underwater environment. But also, when you come out of the water again too, you have a lot of travel mobility, and if I've got a Desmodus, I can easily get a very high level one of these things, but do bear in mind you probably want to bring a Mosschops along as well and feed that to it first if you want 100% effectiveness on the thing. In at number 3, we have got the Maywing, and come on, this creature really does deserve to be here. It is the epitome of all traveling mounts, and Wildcard is probably never going to make a better travel mount, to say the least. It is the fastest of the bunch, And while not a flyer, it is an extremely powerful glider in that sense. It really does excel in the category of travel, and its weight is decent as well, and its stamina, obviously it's going to last you for ages. It is a glider after all. The saddle was unlocked at level 18, which is essentially just an absolute cheat code, but I usually wait until level 21 so that I can get the tranks. Then obviously you want 3 signs. Get 3 signs, some tranks, and the Maywing saddle, and boom, you can tame yourself the highest level Maywing right off of the bat that you can find. You don't have to settle for lower levels to start off with, although it may seem tempting. If you do your trap right, the high level Maywing is not going to get out, and if you just have enough tranks, which isn't actually a lot, to knock out a really high level one, you should be fine. They act as a portable feeding trough too, so you should have no trouble out there if you're a breeder. They work with the Gigantoraptor as well, which is a recent addition to Ark. But if you're still on ASE, kind of like I am most of the time, you don't have to worry about that. They're pretty decent swimmers, like the Bloodstalker too, and they can glide on top of the water, and they're berry gatherers, which you shouldn't underestimate. In at number 2, we have got the Shadowmane. This is just such a diverse creature in terms of abilities. Again, there might be some sort of disagreement with what I put in the number 1 spot, but I really truly love that creature, so I'm going to keep it there. My opinions, after all, feel free to comment down below if your opinions differ. I'll remind you of that in the outro of the video too. But the Shadowmane is just so well designed in terms of all the abilities that it really does pack. It can jump to incredible heights, which is just like, it's insane how high these things can actually jump. You can easily travel this biome on Crystal Isles without even the need of a flyer with a creature like this. It's like, still, it shocks me how high these things can jump. They have the hydration buff too, and of course are great swimmers. And the bleed ability too, at least I think they have the bleed ability. Let's hope that I didn't get that wrong. I'm confident they do. At least the last time I used them, they did. And yeah, I'm not sure. I'll put a notice on screen. I've had a brain blank, but let's get on to the next one. And in number 1, we have got the Deinonychus, and this creature really is one of my favorites, and in fact it probably just is my favorite Ark creatures out there. These things are just so good for such a wide variety of things, namely boss fights, as they can deal bleed to bosses, and no other Ark creature can do this. And I love their general model design, and they just look so cool with all of the feathers on them. They really have had a lot of thought put into them, but that grappling onto a creature just looks so sort of majestic in a way, you could almost say. It is just so cool and so well designed in all of their abilities. They have the bleed ability on top of that too, which is just such a nice thing. Did I say bleed ability again? Yes, I did. I meant pack buff, because the pack buff is going to boost your damage even more. Because yes, once you got 3 or more of these things, you get that pack buff, and you're going to be dealing even more damage. They take no full damage too, which is just so nice for a creature like this. Like, come on. Having no full damage on a creature with insane mobility is an absolute godsend. It really does add a lot of fluidity into all of your playing. These creatures are just amazing for all of that, and they can climb up any kind of wall or vertical surface, the exact same as the Thyla, but I find they are far more effective creatures, and they're allowed in bosses too, and they don't take full damage, and I just find them to be way better creatures, and they, in my opinion, are the best or most well designed Ark creatures out there. The top 10 most fun Ark Tames. In at number 10, we have got the Carcharodontosaurus, and the reason why I've put this creature here, as personally, I really do find it fun to just go and ride around on one of these things, and then obviously you can just absolutely decimate tons and tons of creatures across the map. It really does just make for a very fun experience with a creature like this. If you can absolutely dominate the space across a map and just like kill everything in your sight, there is something inherently fun about that. The Giga kind of does do the same, but I find its mobility does lack quite a lot, and that kind of stops the fun compared to this creature, whereas you can just go for ages with this thing and you don't really run out of stamina, and the damage just keeps getting higher until that blood rage is full. So there's just a lot of element of fun just with you essentially feeling like you're on top of the world, like you're the strongest creature out there when you're on this thing. Obviously you're not, but still there's just so much fun in even taming these things, and also just for general use as well after you've obviously tamed them. The taming process, I find, if it glitches it can be very infuriating, but if it actually does go smoothly, it's quite a fun and enjoyable one, especially if you got a few friends along the way. And sometimes if it bugs and you got a few friends along the way, it still does provide for fun experiences. You can just laugh about how the game is failing a lot, and you know, Ark players do like to do that a lot. But yeah, that's why I say the Crocodonsaurus is a very fun tame. Next up, we've got the Managama, and this creature is here as you can absolutely zoom across the map with this thing, and also just as a general mount, just for traveling around on, they are really successful in the fun department. I find these creatures are just insane to zoom around with. Their mobility really does make them very fun creatures, and although their tame method doesn't really have anything to do with the funness scale, we'll call it for the purpose of this video, I find as long as it does go smoothly, it can be a reasonably enjoyable one to do, because it's not just the standard knockout tame. There is some sense of variety within it, which, you know, it makes these things slightly more interesting, you could say, to get around, which I think does hugely benefit these creatures on this list. And obviously the main reason why they're here is because of that insane speed. Having these creatures travel at such a rate really does make them insanely fun for me. And you know, as a player that doesn't usually tend to just go around with creatures like this, whenever I do hop on one, it really is sort of a breath of fresh air in a way, because I always love coming back to these creatures and using them. I really should use them even more, but they have been obviously nerfed since release, so they're not quite as good as they used to be, but it's still nice to have that speed and agility. It really does add a huge element of fun to these things. Next up, we have got the Astrodelphis, and this creature is here because, like, come on, it's got such an insane speed. And I promise not all the creatures on this list are just simply here because of an insane amount of speed, because, you know, although fast creatures are definitely really fun, maybe the funnest creature out there on the funness scale is not necessarily the fastest one. But for the case of the Astrodelphis, and also I'm going to say the Tropiognathus, it really does help significantly that they are fast. They would be less fun if they weren't, especially considering all the agility that they can do, and they can do it at such a speed. It's so fun and also just enjoyable to do. You really do love these creatures just for all of their insane mobility skills, and that's kind of what makes them really fun. The same goes for the Tropiognathus, and also with their immense amount of weaponry on top of it as well, it adds even more on top of it. They're just so packed with useful, nice abilities, and they're just well designed, very mobile creatures that really do go quite a long way for giving you a better playing experience. It really does have something to be said that these are some fun creatures. And yes, I'm putting two in at this spot because I was being a bit indecisive, but mainly the Astrodelphis, but obviously the Tropiognathus does fit into a very similar category of creature, so I decided to put it here as well. Next up, in at number 7, we have got the Rhinogonatha, and this creature is simply here because, like, come on, who doesn't love to ride around on this giant insect thing? And although it's a little bit too OP for my liking, it definitely is a hugely enjoyable creature to ride around on and use generally across any map. Obviously they only spawn on the island and Lost Island in the swamp areas, but still you can transfer them to other maps, and they're useful in a lot of other scenarios. Obviously they're great for just doing general PvP raiding, but they're just great as general travel mounts as well. They can pick up tons of creatures too, so if you want to get to some bosses fast, instead of herding all your Rexes up to the volcano, you can always use a Rhinogonatha. If that's something that you want to do, you can obviously just use cryos and stuff like that as well, but you know, if you want to do it that way, you can. Also, if you just want to take some creatures across the map, or if you don't have access to the cryos at the moment, you can always just take a creature back with it, although you probably would at the time that you're taming this thing, unless you've been gifted one by like a server admin or something like that. rare scenarios, but you know, maybe sometimes it would happen. Their tame method is pretty much the same as the Reaper, it's just been ripped off of it. Obviously it doesn't really count as a rip-off because it's made by the same people, but still, you know, I felt they could have been a little bit more inventive with the tame method, but it definitely still is an enjoyable one because I really do like the tame method of the Reaper, and you know, it's a very nice one to do. I don't really like the fact that now you need to use loads of materials instead of gathering XP. I prefer the Reaper's tame method in that regard, but apart from that, really fun and enjoyable tame method. I know you don't really factor that in usually, but I find the tame method is quite fun as well. It really does make me want to tame the creature more, and then once I've tamed it, if it's still fun, it really does just elevate it on this list. I'm just gonna say, and it definitely really does deserve to be up here. It can demolish tons of creatures, it's fast, it can pick up tons of things, and it's such a great flyer for all kinds of things, and for that it really does deserve to be on this list because it can't be demoted for its insane amount of skill and power, and also just the amount of thought and design that's gone into this creature from wildcard. It really does just make it an even better one and nicer one to use. And obviously, sadly, you're going to lose yourself a creature, but I think it's all worth it to get yourself a Rhino Ganatha. Next up, we have got ourselves the Velonosaur, and this creature is here because I really love shooting those spines out of this creature. I find that is just such a useful and effective ability. Like, I know it's not really the most complicated thing out there, but I really just do enjoy this creature's simplicity in a way. It makes it so much more enjoyable to me. Very easy tame, and obviously you can get those Velonosaurs on Gen 2 as well. Like, honestly, great creatures to tame. If you haven't already and you have access to them, please go tame yourself a Velonosaur. You'll not regret it. Just for general use, they're insane. You can even take them into bosses if you want to. I'm pretty sure they can go into boss fights. If not, that might just be because I have some sort of mod installed. Obviously, maybe not the best boss creature out there, but still, I do find it fun from time to time to go out on one of these creatures and do some bosses with them, but mainly for just general travel around the map. I find them to be extremely effective, and obviously that's what I use them for the most, and I really do enjoy them for that. They're truly fun creatures, especially that spine attack that I was talking about there. It adds so much depth and character to these creatures, even though they're so simple. They're so basic in their simplicity that it makes them really fun because they're so simple. You instantly know what to do with these creatures. There's no faffing around with things. It is just boom, there you go, done. It really does make these creatures so effective in this department. In at number 5, we've got ourselves the Gigantoraptor, and I kind of feel like I have to put this creature here. I know it's still a really new one, but I've been really just enjoying it. It's a very mobile creature, and yeah, obviously you can throw eggs out to tame it as well, but I found just trapping it works just fine, and for me that makes the tame method a lot more fun because I don't really just go into all the process of getting those eggs, and the mini game is definitely a very nice one to have, and I like how inventive that tame method is, as it's something we've never seen before. I did expect them to be a little bit larger, but obviously that doesn't really matter. But you really feel like you can do pretty much anything with these creatures. Yeah, maybe they don't deal the most damage out in the world, they still can deal a hefty amount, and you can pretty much destroy everything on the map with these things, and obviously you can carry babies with them like you could on a Maywing. And you know, there's so much use out of these creatures, and I know they're only new, but still you can get tons of great use out of these things. Next up, we have got the Bloodstalker, and I really do love these things for just general travel and underwater exploration. As just me as a person, I've always really liked the thought of an ocean, and just oceans in games always make me just generally quite excited. That's why I really like playing through Subnautica and Raft and all of those games. They really are some of my favourites out there, and the fact that I can use the Bloodstalker to do some insane underwater exploration in Ark, it really does make it a hugely fun creature for me. And also just generally, you can just basically pretend to be Spider-Man going around the map, and obviously you do kind of get an awesome spyglass sort of effect as well. As you can see, all the aggressive creatures just generally makes them really useful, because not everyone does have access to awesome spyglass out there, so you do essentially once you have one of these creatures. And the tame method is pretty inventive as well, especially considering they did it first. You can obviously just feed them some moss chops prior to when you actually feed them the blood bags, which is obviously in your inventory in yourself, to get yourself 100% effectiveness. It's really not that much of a challenge whatsoever. And obviously on Gen 1 you can just get some hexagons anyway, and then from that you can obviously get you can get hexagons with the Bloodstalker from the Bloodstalker race missions. That's what I meant to say. It went a bit off track of thought there. Either way, insanely great just general travel mounts, and obviously great for underwater exploration, which is the main reason why I'm putting them here. Kind of a little bit undervalued relating to my last video. That'll be at the end of this video if you do want to go watch that, do the Bloodstalker, because I find people don't use it for that enough, and it really is great for that. And obviously you can also just grapple creatures in and kind of suck the life out of them too, and if you have blood bags on you, it can heal itself quite quickly as well. So it's useful and versatile and fun in so many ways. In at number 3 we have got the Desmodus, and this creature is here just because, like, come on, it's the Desmodus. It is this like Nordic bat. Obviously I know it's not really Nordic in a sense, but it comes from a very Nordic map, which is why I'm obviously calling it that, although obviously it was much before the Nordic period when this thing actually did exist, if it did exist. Not to this scale though. I'm pretty sure it was actually an existing thing though. And this creature is just insanely great for PvP, and although I don't use it, I don't actually play Ark a lot in PvP, is what I meant to say. Whenever I do, it's really fun to just pick players off mounts with these things. Really useful ability. Also that gliding ability, general speed, makes them really nice. Just as a general fast traveling mount, it really does just make these creatures even more fun to me. And obviously with Sanguine Elixir, taming creatures becomes an absolute breeze, and you know, that makes these things even more fun for me to use. It's just pretty much in endless versatility with things that you can do with these creatures, and I really do love them for that, and I get so much fun out of many uses with this creature. Next up we have got the Reaper, and obviously I had to put this creature here. Come on, look at this thing. Like, this is that ultimate Ark creature capable of just so much stuff in the fun department. Its tame method is insane to get through. Like, I love taming these things. Again, I did say it with the Rhinognatha, but I find it is an even better taming method than that. And also, I find they're just more fun creatures to use. They fit into the map so much better than something like the Rhinognatha, and I felt like more thought and design was been put into them. And although, yes, maybe people would prefer to have that other tail ability, which does still torpor to creatures, which the Reaper Queen does, instead of just the one that slows down enemy creatures. That's the only one real downside I can think of the Reaper. They still are so fun to ride around on, as you just feel like you can decimate everything in the map. They can just deal tons of damage, and are pretty agile in the mobility aspect too. They can even bury themselves underground. There's like pretty much endless uses for these creatures, and I really do love them for that. There's so much you can do with a Reaper, especially if you tame a good one and you put all the effort in it. There's like no better feeling than really getting to that stage and getting that successful Reaper tame. It really does it always works out for you mentally. You really do feel so proud of yourself when you tame one of these things, and it is a hugely fun experience once you've done it right. And finally, in at number 1 we have got ourselves the Deinonychus, and I feel like this creature really does have to be here, as it deserves to be on this list, as it's so versatile in so many ways. Such a great fun boss creature once you've got a big pack of these things. There is no better feeling than driving these things straight into tons of creatures which are really difficult to kill, and absolutely decimating them with tons of blood flying everywhere, because of obviously that bleed ability, just grappling onto creatures and ripping them to shreds. It really is just hugely satisfying, and no other creature really gives me the same kick as these creatures do. I know loads of people get the same kind of kick out of something like a Shadowmane, but I vastly prefer the Deinonychus. The tame method, although not the most inventive, is actually just a pretty nice one. I like how it's just the Wyvern's tame method, but a little bit modified. It's a lot easier than taming a Wyvern as well, especially if you're taming Wyverns on Scorched Earth, and obviously then you can just assemble a huge pack of these things and decimate loads of things across the map. They also do have insane amounts of speed as well, again making these creatures even more fun, because with more speed it is better on obviously that funness scale. These things also don't take full damage, so there's no kind of loss of immersion in a sense of where you can just kind of do what you want, and you're just so immersed in this creature that you have no care in the world for what's about to come up next. And obviously they can park up walls as well. Nothing really can stand in your way in terms of terrain, obviously, unless it's just lava, but no creature really can go through that unless you're obviously on a Magmasaur, but that creature's not on this list because, you know, in my opinion, that's still a good creature, but it does not compare to the Deinonychus, which is in at the #1 spot. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed, as I definitely did enjoy making this one. As always, comment down below what is the most fun Ark Tame to you. If you didn't agree with this list, also put your 10 most fun Ark creatures in the comments below, and I'll see you all later.